Hey there, Drawyah here, and welcome to this tutorial in which I'll take a look at the landing procedure for the DC Designs Concorde in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hopefully by now you have the aircraft airborne and on your way to destination. If you haven't learned the startup procedure for the airplane, then do click on the eye in the top right corner to learn the startup process. Otherwise, right now we find ourselves at Mach 2.02, around 300 miles from our destination airport at New York JFK. When it comes to Concorde, you're generally looking at around 250 to 300 miles for the setup, descent, approach and landing. And so make sure you have everything set up nice and early, so that you're not rushing everything in the last few minutes for your descents. So jump cockpit, take a look at the aircraft setup, and start our descent into JFK. So here we are at cruise in our Concorde. Before we get started with the approach setup, let's familiarise ourselves with where we're at. Your Autopilot 1 and Flight Director should be active, and you should be on the INS, Max Cruise and Altitude Hold modes at cruising altitude, which in this case is flight level 580, 58,000 feet. In terms of our approach, we'll be landing at New York JFK Airport, runway 31 left. And so we have our charts available from Navigraph and all METSAT for our approach weather information. The first thing you want to do is head down to your FMS. And what we're going to do is select the star and the runway. You do this by selecting your final waypoint, which is your destination, which in this case is KJFK. Pressing the first key for the arrival page. What we're going to do is select our approach, which in this case is ILS 31 left. So using the up and down keys, you can select the different approach availables. 31 left is available, we'll select that. And for arrival, we shall be expecting the Parch 3 approach. So scroll down to your approach, in this case Parch 3. Select that. Wait for the start to load. This will take a few seconds. And on this occasion, we'll be not using any fire points for our landing. So, arrival to JFK will be on runway 31 left on the Parch 3 start. Once you're happy, insert that into your FMS. Heading back to our flight plan page, you can now see that we are heading towards JFK with several waypoints now added to the list. So instead of flying direct from Echo November Echo to the runway 31 left, or to the airport itself even, we now have the runway selected and several waypoints to guide us to the runway. Once you've done this, head over to the performance page of your FMS and click on the next phase button twice, and it will take you to the approach performance of the aircraft. And here you'll manually input your QNH, your temperature, your wind, transiting altitude, and your decision heights to arrival airports. So based on the meter right now, the QNH at JFK is 2955. So input 2955. Don't do it too quickly, as this will then switch over from the numbers of letters. Input that. The temperature at JFK right now is 12 degrees centigrade. The winds are reporting 190.24 knots. So 190, push and hold the slash, and then 24. And transition altitude is 18,000 feet. That's that. The decision heights for JFK will be 440 feet, so input 440. Ignore the landing config flaps, since Concorde does not have flaps on board. And away from that, we can now move away from the flight management computer. At this stage, we are now approximately 260 miles from our destination. 250 miles is around about when top descent will hit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to reduce our speed to subsonic speeds. You can can do this by activating the auto throttle 1, setting the IS acquired mode, and reducing your airspeed from 400 down to 350 knots. What this will do is it will start the slowdown of your aircraft from supersonic to subsonic speeds, which is very important when over land and populated areas, because what you're going to do is mitigate the number of sonic booms you get over land, and by the time you hit populated cities, you should no longer be flying supersonic, but rather at the airspeed similar to those aircraft around you. And finally, when you hit your top descent, what you're going to do is set your altitude to your required descent. So at JFK, the intercept for the glide slope at 31 left is 1,800 feet. So we're going to reduce this to 1,800. Sets the altitude acquired mode, and the vertical speed mode. What we're going to do is using the little switch underneath the flight management computer, push the nose down to a rate between 2,500 and 3,000 feet per minute. You can view descent rates via the vertical speed indicator to the right of the PFD. And so all you're doing is flicking the switch to nose down, while keeping an eye on your descent rates to get it between these two lines here. So that should work for us quite nicely. One thing to remember when setting the Concordes, and this is noted for us quite nicely on the engineer's notepad here, is for your descent, what you're looking for is around 20,000 feet for 100 nautical miles from DME. At that point, you'll then reduce to 300 knots ground speed, which with a descent rate of 1,000 feet per minute gives an ETA of around 20 minutes. So bear that in mind when you're making descents. From 250 miles, a descent rate at 350 knots, 2,550 feet per minute, will get you round about that figure of 100 miles for 20,000. But as you continue descent, just keep monitoring your descent rate and altitude and make small adjustments here and there when required for your descents. At this point, we've now configured our flight management computer for the star and the performance. We've reduced our speeds to 350 knots indicated, which will slowly bring us down from supersonic to subsonic speeds, and our altitude set to our intercept for the glide slope once we get close to our destination. So at this point, you can sit back and relax a little while maintaining and monitoring your aircraft as you start to continue your descent. So at this stage, we're now approaching 20,000 feet, and we are 107 miles from our destination. So going back to the calculation of 100 miles at 20,000 feet, 300 nautical miles for 1,000 feet descent rate 20 minutes. What we're going to do is we're going to reduce our airspeed to 300 knots, press the IS acquired switch to reduce throttle, and reduce our descent rates to around 1,000 feet per minute. So holding the nose up switch, watch the rate of descent adjust because you went a little bit too far there. Way too far actually. So you have two ways to do it. You can use the mouse wheel to scroll, or you can click and hold the dial to adjust it. I think using the mouse was a little more accurate than clicking and holding. What you're going to do is get this as close to 1,000 feet per minute as possible, while speed reduces down to 300 knots. Don't forget too, in the US, as transition altitude at 18,000 feet, to set your altimeter at this point to the local altimeter destination, which right now is 29055. So of course the transition altitude is at 5,000, we'll set the altimeter later on. As far as the US, transition altitude is around about now 18,000 feet. Therefore, make sure altimeter is set for the approach this time. Our aeroplane is now flying at subsonic speeds at 0.7 Mach 69 at 18,000 feet. We can continue our descent towards JFK. So we now know we are around 20 minutes away from our destination. But once again, all you're doing is maintaining your descent, monitoring your speed and your altitude, and make small adjustments here and there to get the aircraft as close to your preferred altitude as possible on the rest of the way down. So you can see the aircraft now maintaining speed, maintaining steady descent rates, and we are at this stage 95 miles from our destination. We are now approaching 10,000 feet. There are two things we need to do now. The first is set the navigation frequency for the approach runway. So the ILS frequency for runway 31 left at JFK is 111.35. What we're going to do is set this for both sides. 111.35. 111.35. And the second thing we need to do, as you cross 1,000, is turn on the landing lights. So extend main, extend main. We're now ready for the approach configuration. What we're going to do is reduce the airspeed down to 250 knots. So it's 250 below 10,000. Sets the IS to quiet switch to reduce our airspeed, and to slowly bring the throttles down in the aircraft to a lower speed. And at this point, we're going to try and fly essentially as close to the subsonic commercial airlines around us as possible, but while bearing in mind that the Concorde has an higher approach speed to travel traffic around us. So if you're flying on ATC, such as either VATSIM, then you're expecting controllers to essentially give you the special clearances if you approach into the airport. If you're flying offline, then feel free to do what you need to do to get the aircraft down and close to your airport. So now passing 10,000 feet at a speed of slowly approaching 250 knots. Once again, you're maintaining and monitoring your rate of descent to your altitude and airspeed. And what you're looking for is a intercept at the correct altitude for the approach you're making. So in our case, we should be reaching the exact waypoint that's around 2,000 feet, mils at 1,800. And at that point onwards, the aircraft should be maintaining and following the glide slope down to the runway. Now I've already set the navigation frequency for runway 1135, but what we haven't done is set the course. Now the course is the very last thing we're going to set on the approach. So in this case the course heading is 314 degrees. Essentially that gets done once we've already got ourselves flying runway heading towards the airport. We're not quite yet on the glide slope. So keep on your altitude, keep on your airspeed. At this stage we are approximately 34 miles from JFK. That's an altitude of 8,000 feet. Very shortly, this aeroplane will make its final turn towards the runway using the GPS on air system, which in this case will be flying from ZAC towards Meals. And as soon as it does this, what it's going to do is we're going to switch over from the INS GPS system to the radio navigation system. So we'll wait to cross the ZAC waypoint, so I can make the right hand turn. Going to switch from INS to radio, confirm that the course matches out on the chart, which is 314 degrees, 314 sets. The Localiser comes on, and reduce the speed to 180 knots, which is the minimum approach speed of the Concorde. At this point you can lower the visor. This will take a few seconds to get going. They can lower the visor down to the first position. The buzz that you hear right now, this is the outer marker just saying that you're now approaching the Glidepath for the airports. The visor comes down, and as soon as it does this, what you can then do is lower it to the full 10 degrees landing position. Aircraft level at 1800. Now maintaining, keep an eye on, is the vertical and horizontal arrows for the approach. This is essentially the majority times you can see on more modern aircrafts. It tells you where your current position is compared to the Localiser and Glidepath. So a little bit below the Glidepath, a little bit to the left of the runway. The aircraft will make small adjustments to keep the aircraft as centered as possible. And likewise, if the aircraft is not quite flying a heading, as a pilot you can make some adjustments yourself on the yoke to start bringing the aircraft slightly more level. You see right now we are flying runway heading, and the horizontal, the vertical arrow now moving. Turn on Autopilot 2, and as soon as that hits the middle of the marker, turn on the aircraft's landing mode. All standard now light up, and the aircraft will start to follow the glide path down. At 7 miles, you can load landing gear. And at this point, you are now on final approach. Just a seat is required, which in this case, given that the Concorde has a very high pitch on approach, you may want to sit slightly above the glare shield. Once you have the aircraft maintaining speed, you can switch off the auto throttle and maintain manual throttle for the approach. As you pass 1,000 feet, when you're comfortable, you turn off the autopilot and take full manual control of the aircraft on landing. Continue to make small adjustments to the throttle and yoke as you make your final approach. And try not to overcorrect the aircraft as well. The Concorde has a lot of roll ability. The last thing you want to do is twist it too far and bring it onto the roof. So small adjustments, keep it steady. Aim for the 2 red, 2 white pappies. The high pitch buzz you're hearing now, this is your decision heights, your minimums. As soon as that cuts, let's continue. 30 feet, slowly reduce throttle, start to load the aeroplane, and bring it in for a touchdown. That's set. Push nose down. Apply braking as required. 6 knots reverses cuts. As soon as the steering light lights up on the left hand side of your panel, the aircraft has left its landing configuration, and you're free to vacate the runway. Once you left the runway, there's very little to do in regards to clean up. The visor will stay down for the duration of your taxi. The landing lights, you can switch over to taxi lights. So extend lights all off. Taxi lights can now be set. So as you approach your standard choice, at this point, now raise the visor up. Make those small adjustments to bring your aircraft to the end of the taxi marking. At stand, you can turn on the parking brake and switch off all 4 engines. To park your aircraft up, your next return leg. There you have it, you've now landed at your destination. It's a bit of a fiddly approach in the Concorde, does take a little bit of learning, but once you get to grips with it, it's not the most difficult aircraft in the world to get going. But definitely take some time to practice, especially the landing phase of the aircraft, as making those small adjustments to get it to the runway, like I say, does take a bit of time to get going. Otherwise, yeah, hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, do leave a like. If you did enjoy it, subscribe. And so, if you did find the video helpful, please do give it a like, and if you haven't done so already, do subscribe to the channel too, as it does help us out. And also consider sharing the video too, as I think a lot of people now get a hang of taking off the aeroplane and getting it all set up from the first video, but it's the landing that even took me a bit of time to get used to. So learning, practice, getting into the aircraft is not the easiest airplane to get down onto the ground. So do take time to practice, do potentially save yourself a starting location and just practice landing a few times, as the last thing you want to do is fly a long haul and realise you missed your top descent, have to hold somewhere, or kind of have to come back around for another attempt elsewhere. It does take time, it does take practice, but keep at it. It's not a difficult aircraft, Concorde, if you do get time to get the hang of it. Otherwise, yeah, thank you for watching. Do take care of yourselves, and happy flying at the Concorde. Have a good one, and bye-bye.